Raiders Zone Weekly with Steve Kandray, Vince Calautti, Billy Hassinger, and Jesse Meade.
This is Raiders Zone Weekly with myself, Jesse Meade, Steve Kandray, Billy Hassinger, Vince Calautti. The group is here. We are a whole collective unit. Our good friend Steve is here with us. Nice to see you, Steve.
I think that's the first time you've ever called me my good friend Steve before.
That's because you're here and not away, so I can't make fun of you. But still, nice to have a whole group here. It's good for continuity. You know, it's I'm glad that this is how we're going to do it, and no more missing shows. You're on notice. We will find you.
Okay. I actually won't be here next week.
Oh.
That's a true story. I'm gonna be in Covington, Kentucky, actually. So
wow,
it's a rare treat.
Wow. You just dropped a bomb on us. We haven't even started talking about sports yet. I hope you bring a lot to the table tonight because you have to make up for 2 weeks now.
I will. It'll be
3 weeks.
It'll be
really.
2 weeks, 3 weeks worth of content in one show.
All right. Well, then you can start off our discussion of what's the deal with Peyton Hillis. Again, his status is uncertain for this weekend's game. Really, it seems the Madden curse has hit our good buddy very hard.
All right, so far we got pretty much 2 injuries that he's made public. He's got the strained hamstring, and he was out for a game with strep throat. But, I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I think that it really just comes down to the blocking that he got last year versus this year. I mean, you can look around the league and look at running backs who've had good seasons and then have fallen off the edge, and it's usually how well their offensive line is done. I mean, I think if you look at the Browns last year and watch highlight from the game, he would make it into the secondary, and that's when he would have those big explosive plays. He wasn't making unbelievable cuts. He wasn't finding the hole extra well. He was just getting through a big hole and then pounding out some small cornerback to come up. So I'm really not, I never really was on the bandwagon because I'm a Steelers fan and I really don't believe in the entire Browns organization. But I don't think that it's him really falling off. I think he legitimately has had some injuries, and I think it really comes down to the fact that he's not getting those gaping holes like he did last year because his O-line is not run blocking nearly as well as last year.
He's got the most yards after contact of any running back in the NFL, and that's with him being out. Montario Hardesty is third. So after that first initial hit, they're gaining the most yards afterwards. So there's that production there is still the same. But Jamison Hensley, the AFC North blogger, recently was just reading some of his stuff. Hillis first full practice since October 26th. He is saying he's going to play Sunday. So although the comments were making fun of him saying no, he'll be out by Sunday.
Well.
But I'm going to have to go with Steve. It's partly the offensive line. The other things I think the biggest concern is too is he's made public now that he's talking about a contract, and I think that's partially bugging him because he feels he should get some sort of money, but there's too much stuff floating around right now with everything, and it all started with him being sick, and then the contract thing evolved even more.
The point that I would make about Peyton Hillis and Montario Hardesty and that they have all these yaks would be that it's easy to have your yaks be a little bit bigger when you're hit instantly behind the line on every single play. When the first contact occurs at the line of scrimmage, then every single yard is going to be after contact for those guys, especially like Peyton Hillis, as big as he is. Mm-hmm. It does seem kind of interesting, though, doesn't it, Billy? He had one great year, and now he wants to get paid like a running back that produces that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, he had that one great year in Cleveland, and you got to look back to when he was at Denver. He was having a pretty good, decent career there, too, with Mike Shanahan, but really when you're a running back in Denver with Shanahan, you're going to have a great career running the ball with the way that his offensive line schemes work. But also, like Vince said, with the contract that's been brought up, it's almost like he's kind of becoming a little bit of a baby here this year, just acting like he's letting it affect him. He just doesn't look like he's really putting out the great effort that he did last season.
Well, he's also got, you have to look at the last game that he was truly healthy, and he did rush for over 100 yards. They really put the team on his back and carried them in that last against the Dolphins. So you have to look at that as well. If he stays completely healthy, I think he can still get those 100-yard rushes, and maybe not top-tier running back, but paid $2-3 million maybe, something around that range. This
is the dangerous area for running backs because you know how good they could have been, and you perhaps are going to pay them, but you don't know if you're ever going to see that again. That's the dangerous area for running backs, I think. Second subject of the evening, is it fair that either LSU or Alabama's chances of winning a national title will likely be over after one of them has to lose this weekend?
I don't think it is fair because you look at it, these are probably the two best teams in the country. You got Oklahoma State in the Big 12, who's right up there as well, and Stanford up there. But these two, Alabama and LSU, they're in the top 10 in every defensive category you can think of. Alabama's number 1 in total defense. LSU's number 3. There's no doubt that those two, like I said, the best two teams in the country, best defensive teams in the country. Alabama might have a little bit better edge on the offensive side of the ball, but I think that with LSU, they got the more experience at quarterback. But No, it's definitely not fair that either one of these teams are going to have almost no shot at the national title after this weekend.
This is the problem with big-time college football to begin with. You got two great teams that are going up and playing, and no playoff system for them to go and duke it out there at the end. But the other thing you got to look at, they may end up playing in the national title anyways. There is speculation that they won't drop either of these teams very far and have a realistic shot of jumping another undefeated team to get back into the title game, and then we'd all be crying foul about that because they lost. And you're gonna favor them over an undefeated team,
It kind of makes it interesting if you look at the psychology of the voters. It kind of reminds me of when Ohio State played Michigan and they were ranked 1 and 2. If the number 2 team loses to the number 1 team by like a field goal or touchdown, shouldn't they stay number 2? I mean, what have they done to lose that ranking? But we know if one of these teams get knocked off, they're not going to go to number 2. They're going to go to number 3 or 4 for some arbitrary reason. It just seems like it's sort of some unwritten rule that if you're 1 and 2 and you lose it, you have to drop by more than one spot or you have to drop at all. I mean, technically, if 2 loses number 1, they're supposed to. They really shouldn't even drop at all. So it's just so weird. Like we should. I mean, I don't want to make it into just a playoff versus non-playoff discussion because it really seems like it could easily go that way. And when I was researching this story, I was like, well, it's going to be playoff versus non-playoff. But, it's really not fair. It shouldn't be about trying to make the most exciting regular season. It should be about getting the 2 teams on the national championship stage that are the best in the country.
That's why I love Division III voting. When you look at the Division III polls, the voters do so differently than Division I voters. We've seen in recent years, we saw Capital play a great game to Mount Union and lose, and they shoot up the rankings. We see Oshkosh play a great game to Whitewater. They move up 5 spots after a loss. That would never happen in Division I. At best, you would stay in the exact same spot as you were the week before. Again, you could make it a playoff issue if you wanted to, but really just thinking about how voting is done, I can tell you exactly where these teams will fall after one of them loses, right ahead of Boise State. That'll be where they're slotted in the standings.
Yeah, that's exactly where they're going to go. They say that Boise State plays such a paper schedule over the years, and they just have not been the great team that they're supposed to be. And this year they moved into the Mountain West Conference hoping that they get a little bit more points by playing a little bit tougher schedule, but they've been blowing out their teams as well this year, so they just really haven't had the chance to really do much this year.
So you're saying one of the teams will drop to 2, because I think Boise is 3rd. So they just might flip-flop? Maybe. Because everybody hates Boise State.
I thought Boise was 5 last time I saw
I thought they jumped up to 3.
Nope, they're 5th.
I think it depends what poll you look at. I think they're different in the
AP
versus the board.
The BCS poll, I think, goes LSU, Bama, Oklahoma State, Stanford, then Boise.
Yeah. That's right.
Either way, they'll go right in front of Boise because everyone hates Boise State. It's the trendy thing to do. So, of course, it's the trendy thing for me to hate everyone that hates on Boise State.
5 undivided.
I'm like a football hipster, really. 5 undivided guys. Chargers guard Chris Daleman suffered a seizure on the plane after suffering a concussion in game. Daleman was not pulled from the game because the Chargers really lacked a suitable backup to play at guard. And, of course, not conclusive, but believed that his concussion is what led to this seizure that he had on the plane. And concussions have been a major staple of the NFL that they've been talking about, that they've been working to improve diagnosis. They've been working to improve treatment of concussions. They've also been working to improve rules about coming back in a game or going back during the season after so many concussions. How could something like this then happen?
This just goes to show how much farther the NFL has to go. They're doing this. It's a big media propagation, big public relations thing right now is what it looks like. We're going to make these guys sit down and everything. But when it comes down to it, the teams are looking going, we don't have these players, go back in. And the players at the same time also have that mentality of they can't wuss out, they can't do those things. They have to step up for their team. They don't want to be pulled. So they're going to go out and say, I'm fine, go. They're going to convince the doctors, the head coaches will go over them because the head coach wants to win the football game. If you don't have a suitable backup for it, what are you going to do? You're going to put in your guy, or you're going to put in somebody else who's as capable, and then that guy will go back in after a few plays. It's basically seems like a big PR campaign to me for these guys until the NFL really starts finding somebody. Well, we found out you played a guy with concussion. Here's a fine. You lose a draft pick, something like that. They have to take extreme drastic measures for these teams to get the point across.
I really agree because right now there's really no repercussion for playing a player who could get hurt because from the league's perspective there's massive repercussions, but from an actual team, the only thing you have to worry about is like a class action lawsuit coming 20 years down the line. But I mean, they're looking at this and saying, well, I want to play my best guys. Maybe he has an injury, maybe he doesn't, but right now I want to win this football game. And like Vince said, I think the NFL needs to come down with some really stringent regulations on this and not worry so much about players with the hits, but worrying about the teams actually taking care of their players who may or may not be hurt. Because, as we've seen, it's these hits that come after it looks like they had a concussion.
Yeah, a lot of these players, it looks like they're fine, and then they get hit, and then it actually just adds to it. And Dillman, he's been a pretty good guard for the Chargers throughout his career there. There's no question about that, but something like this really could harm a guy because, he's out there. He might not want to take a couple shots or risk getting hit. So it looks like he might be slacking a little bit, but in reality, he's just worrying about his own safety and his own health. So really, things need to be done to try and prevent something like this from happening. If you see a player that has a concussion, you got to pull him out.
A very important name to know in this kind of area. Not many people would unless you're a professional wrestling fan. Christopher Nowitzki used to be a professional wrestler back in the WWE days. Suffered a bunch of concussions. Now he is leading really a giant nexus of research about sports concussions and treatment of concussions, and of course he was all over this news as well. When you look at the NFL, you can't have the players evaluate themselves and decide whether or not they feel good and that they're going to be into the game. When you send a guy back into a game that has a concussion like this, you're putting them at extreme risk, not just for that immediate game or that immediate season. You're putting them at extreme risk for the rest of their lives. This is why we're seeing such extreme rules about concussions coming out in little leagues and high schools, because concussions can really turn around a person's life. Maybe not that year, but years down the line, they will have dramatic side effects because of things like this.
I mean, look at the NHL and look at Sidney Crosby. I mean, I think last year there was speculation that his hockey career might be over, and we've seen him take like 8-9 months to actually come back, and now he's finally just being allowed to play in practice. So, like you said, sometimes it actually is an immediate ramification from the concussion, but most likely it's going to affect them down the line. And I think one thing that if the NFL puts restrictions on these teams, and it's the team that decides who goes in and who goes out, it takes a lot of pressure off the players, because the players, a lot of them on the sideline, a lot of being a part of this team is their ego. They don't want to look like they're just bowing out. They don't want to have that perception of them being a weak player or being somebody who, wusses out, doesn't want to play. It'll take that pressure off them so they don't have to worry about, well, they wouldn't let me go in anyway. They don't have to worry about proving themselves.
Yeah, Justin Morneau is another example from the Twins. He's got a bright future, and 2 concussions have limited him to I don't know how many games only for the Twins. So that's something to look at. Another person to look at, Jim McMahon of the Bears. Yeah. He's going to donate his brain to research afterwards, and they're finding out that these players are getting hit. They're leaving these sort of brain just giant splotches everywhere, that they're losing their memories. So they really need to use more education with these guys for this, and the NFL has to start cracking out, either threaten with losing draft picks, which have become like extremely valuable commodity for trading and everything, or they need to do something like that to get these teams across.
I mean, two of the greatest players of all time in the NFL had their careers cut short really due to concussions. Troy Aikman, Steve Young. Steve Young was a concussion machine, and also was Troy Aikman. Seems like every time he was tackled, he had a concussion during the last couple years of his career. Moving on, though, Isaiah Crowell has been suspended for Saturday's game against New Mexico for failing a drug test. For Georgia, this is huge. Again, if you're a player, you have to know you're going to get tested, but instead you have this going on, and now you're missing out. Of course, it's a game that Georgia will probably win without him, but imagine if this had been a big-time SEC game.
Yeah, and we've been seeing this a lot this year. These players are not using their brains. We seen last week the defensive back from Oregon. He got caught with his violations. Week before that, we saw 3-star players for LSU get suspended for their game due to synthetic marijuana. They're not thinking. They get up there, and they're so young, and they just haven't reached the maturity level that they will reach in a few years. So they think they can go out, do whatever they want. They think they're untouchable, and then they get caught, and then they get brought right back down to earth. And something like this, it's not going to help Georgia this weekend. Even though, like you said, Jesse, they probably will win. I
don't know if you guys read the story where it actually talked about the Athletic Association policy on it, but it was extremely vague, which sort of worried me about Georgia. They said that, according to Athlete Association policy, student athletes are suspended for 10% of their competitions for first-time violations of drug tests. Like, what is that? Are they suspended from 10% of the next season, 10% of their career? I mean, it seemed really weird that your policy is so vague. And second of all, how is doing illicit drugs? I mean, this is just a whole other facet of the story that I thought about. How is doing illicit and illegal drugs, how does that get you in less trouble than selling your own possessions like the players at Ohio State?
That's the thing that I thought.
It's like you do something that is illegal by the U.S. government versus some arbitrary construct that the NCAA created, and you get in less trouble. I mean, it seems really skewed the way this all worked out.
Of course, there's been a lot of talk this week, not from this story, but from others, about the NCAA being compared to a mafia. That was more in the basketball, but the NCAA does. It imposes its rules, and if you don't violate those rules, the NCAA is going to come down real hard on you.
You should play your money thing for that, for why, Steve, because they get money from all that stuff, and they don't like sharing that. It's where a lot of the money, other than the NCAA, other than the tournament, that's where they get a lot of their money. This is just stupid. Pretty much, this is like, oh, great. And, with Georgia's history, they probably will lose in New Mexico now just because of this. Georgia gets bad luck when bad things happen to them.
Just to see players do this, of course, you understand that they're young guys, they're going to make mistakes like this, it's going to happen. But at the same time, that is a good point that Steve raises, violating a national law, taking a Schedule I drug versus selling a jersey that you wore in a game. It appears that selling the jersey is actually the worst decision. It can get you put out for quite a bit longer. Frank McCourt has finally agreed to sell the Dodgers. The team is going to be auctioned off, and our long national nightmare is over. The Dodgers will actually have a real owner.
This was awful. They shouldn't have let. He had debt. He financed debt to make sure he could get this Dodgers team. How does MLB wait a second? You don't even have the money to pay for the team to begin with. I have not been a fan of Bud Selig, and this was a dumb decision, but I was very happy the way he stepped in and said, no, this has got to stop. He finally stepped up and was a man in that situation, but this is good because everything he dragged it through, he used the money to basically fund his lifestyle, which is terrible. It's supposed to be the other way around. You use your money to fund the team to make the team better, not make your life better.
This is the same Major League Baseball that won't let Mark Cuban buy a team.
Right.
A guy who knows how to manage his finances and actually has a team in basketball that's good and actually makes money. It just seems absolutely ridiculous that somebody could take the team, especially like the Dodgers with that kind of name recognition, and just run them into the ground. I mean, at this point in time, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who literally not had a winning season in 20 years, are more profitable than the Dodgers. I mean, it's just like, it's frustrating. I'm not going to go crazy like I usually do, but it's upsetting.
The funny thing about that is Mark Cuban has actually shown interest in buying the Dodgers.
Multiple teams.
Not just that. He's also shown interest in buying the Rangers and the Cubs, but the MLB said no. But now it's an auction, and if Cuban comes out there and he puts up a bid that no one wants to top, he very well could be owning the LA Dodgers, and that would be hilarious to see.
Not too many potential sports owners are more rich than Mark Cuban. The guy is a straight billionaire. The thing is that Steve brought up, and it made me smile to think about the Pittsburgh Pirates being profitable. That's because the Pittsburgh Pirates have been designed to be profitable, which is another problem in the MLB and as far as their ownership goes. Although he's not strictly the owner anymore, McClatchy, when he took that franchise, he pretty much drove them into the ground, but then was able to turn them into a profitable venture by keeping salary low and attendance being high because the Pittsburgh fans will always attend Pirates games. That team is now very profitable, even though they are terrible consistently.
The other thing you got to look at though with this is Cuban said he may not be interested because it's the $1.1 to $1.4 billion that Frank McCourt wanted. You got to think about this. How is he going to get away with this other than being nationally disgraced? He's going to get out with some sort of money on this, and it's just awful. I really think I wish they could do something. Could they tar and feather him and throw him out of town? I mean, it was just, you take a great franchise like that and just destroy it that way.
Allowing something like this to happen. I mean, this is right up there with the Phoenix Coyotes debacle in the NHL. That ownership, that entire thing, where the NHL finally had to step in and buy the team in order to keep it alive. And for some reason, they're still keeping it down there, even though the team just a couple of weeks ago was having attendance numbers of 2,000 and 3,000 fans. I mean, just terrible, terrible numbers. It's amazing that leagues let ownership like this happen, and again, makes you kind of appreciate what the NFL does as far as its very strict owner rules and everything of that nature. On to our cheers of the week, and it's something that I'm pretty happy about. Joe Pa sets the career record win for 409 wins. Huge mark for Joe Paterno. Couldn't happen to a coach that has done more and earned more as a coach in the NCAA. And just think, not too many years ago, people were calling for his head in Penn State because the Nittany Lions weren't that good. They have finally risen back up through the Big Ten, though, as time has gone along here under Joe Paterno.
And that's the thing. You look at his career, he's had a ton of winning seasons, but you then also look at it, he's also had a number of seasons where they finished below 500, and he's having a streak of that here in the early 2000s before he finally came back up with Michael Robinson as his quarterback, and then went on to play Florida State in the Orange Bowl and ended up winning there. Then a couple years of down, then they get back up there. They go on to play USC in the Rose Bowl. They get beat there. But just the fact that he's been able to stay with the program so long, he's been committed to it. He gives back to the school each and every year from his contract, from his salary. It's just great to see someone who's contributed so much to college football be able to get something like that.
I found a pretty interesting stat about Joe Paterno's winning percentage. Games won, actually, as it applies to Penn State. Penn State's been playing football. They've had a football team since 1887. They've had their overall record. Joe Paterno is responsible for half of their wins.
Amazing.
Ever. That's
Amazing.
crazy. He has 49.9% of their wins with 409. I think that's absolutely unbelievable. I think it's also important to note that he's only the Division I record holder for wins, still behind Joe Gagliardi, who is still coaching after 63 years, which is kind of crazy.
The other thing, too, about Gagliardi is that people were calling for his head up in St. John's right now because they're not having the season that they expected. And that's insanity. You're calling for the greatest statistical coach that's ever played.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's kind of funny to look at, too, though, he's only had 3 conference titles in 43 years of coaching. Only 3 Big Ten championships. I think Tressel matched that in his first 3 years at Ohio State. I mean, it's kind of it's cool to have all those wins, but when you're not really backing it up with conference championships or national titles, it's kind of he was good, but it's I don't know. I think he's overrated. He
really should have 3 national titles. They went undefeated the one year. They destroyed, I think it was Alabama or something in the Rose Bowl, whoever it was, and they lost to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
because the writers like Notre Dame, so they voted for them. Notre Dame had 1 loss, and they voted for them. So Joe Pa should have 3. With that being said, it's still a great accomplishment to get that. I still say they run him out of town like they did with Bobby Bowden. I think there's going to come a point because he's been so up and down lately. This season has been good. They're still not even projected to win the leaders division. Actually, it's kind of surprising. Wisconsin and Ohio State, they're giving better chances to win that division than Penn State, but you still got to give him props for winning that much.
So Joe Pa moving to number 1 in Division I with his wins. And you are right. It's been a controversial time in Happy Valley, to say the least, with the amount of not winning that he's done at the same time as winning. But still, big mark for Joe Pa to get. Jeers of the week, Phillip Rivers in general this season. He has been pretty awful. More interceptions than touchdowns. Definitely not the Phillip Rivers that we're used to seeing with the Chargers. And it's been interesting to watch the Chargers play throughout this schedule because, once again, they're seemingly the team in the NFL that has the highest amount of talent that's not producing on a weekly basis.
I think part of this, too, I'm going to go back to blaming the offensive line here. I know that's been my scapegoat. That's my theme of the evening, apparently, is offensive line will win you football games. This is the content he
promised.
Yes, it is. I'm going to come out with some crazy theories. But Phillip Rivers has been sacked 14 times this season. I mean, I think you got to look at their offensive line and say he's not getting the protection he needs. He's been scrambling. He's scrambling. I was getting knocked down all the time. He's been sacked 14 times. I think if he actually has a decent offensive line, he's going to look like the Phillip Rivers that we remember. I mean, you could look at any quarterback. Look at Ben Roethlisberger last year. Well, not 2 years ago when they had a horrible offensive line, and he was just getting sacked constantly. I mean, that makes a huge difference. If you can stand back there for 5 minutes and wait to throw a pass, you're going to look like a much better quarterback than if you're getting scrambled around and forced out of the pocket every other play.
You got to look at some of the stuff is mental for him, though. I think he's got some sort of block this year. In the Monday Night Football game against Kansas City, it's tied 20-20. All they have to do is run the ball a little bit more, and then they're going to kick the game-winning field goal. His hand goes up before the ball even comes and smacks the bottom of his hand. The ball falls, and he fumbles the ball away. Simplest play that a quarterback should ever do, and he messes it up. It's been one of those things it's just happened to him this year. It's just sometimes a quarterback just has a bad year, and it happens. Eli Manning threw how many picks last year?
Yeah.
Peyton Manning had a terrible year. His rookie year was terrible, but Tom Brady had a bad year the year after they won the Super Bowl. Roethlisberger makes struggles after they win the Super Bowl sometimes. So all the elite quarterbacks usually will have some sort of down year at one point and then bounce back from that. I see Phil Rivers bouncing back eventually. It's frustrating because he's on my fantasy team and he's been a staple for my team. He's been a staple for my team, and it hurts me because I like him.
That's why it's frustrating.
Yes.
I was kind of wondering where you were going with it when you were saying, all quarterbacks have struggles after they win the Super Bowl, and I'm like, what?
I meant elite quarterbacks. Guys who've won the Super Bowl, they kind of have struggles sometimes.
Every quarterback's going to struggle eventually, and it's just a matter of when they do it, and Rivers just picking a bad time to do it. I think a little bit of it has to do with his offensive line, but you look at it, there are times where he's standing back there nice and calm in the pocket, and he just makes some of the dumbest throws ever, and they get intercepted, and he will make the mistakes. And he's been a great quarterback for the Chargers ever since he took over for Drew Brees, his 3rd season in the league, but he just hasn't been that bright this year with the decisions that he's making, and it's really come back to hurt the Chargers, especially when they should have beat Kansas City on Monday night. But like Jen said, with that fumble there at the end, they go on and lose in overtime.
The thing that's going to help the Chargers, I think, this year is that they're in the AFC West. If there's any conference that you can be bad in and win, because it's definitely not the NFC West anymore. Now the 49ers are actually good, but it's the AFC West. You still got a shot, even as bad as the Chargers have been at times this year. And I need to cue up a sound effect here because it is another 5 Undivided.
5 Undivided.
There it is. 5 Undivided, guys. It seems like we talk about this every week, but there's something new every week. If Boise State moves to the Big East, is this a smart move? Is this just a year after Boise State moved into the Mountain West from the WAC? They lose a ton of shared revenue if they do make this move, and penalties for moving. Are they even playing the same level of competition if they move from the Mountain West to the Big East? Of course, if the Big East gets Boise State, then does the Big East not lose its automatic bid? There's a lot at play here, but to me, this looks like a step down for Boise State moving from the Mountain West to the Big East.
This is interesting because I think it's name recognition. I think the Big East will keep its conference automatic bid because Boise State and some of the others coming in. I think that's important because of name recognition. Again, like I said before, that's why Penn State lost to Notre Dame. Name recognition. The Mountain West you don't think of as a big name area, so you're still playing teams. Plus, if you look at the big picture, if they're going to Big East and everything, they're going into the best basketball conference coming through, so that gives some good competition for them in basketball. I'm not just you just can't think just football there. If they're moving everything in, or if they only doing it football only, then you got to look at they automatically become the top team right there. That gives them a head start, a head advantage, and then it may give some legitimacy to the Big East when they go into the postseason games, into the bowl games, and they're playing in one of the big name bowls, and they're consistently winning. Yeah, I think it helps them in the long run.
You know, they're just moving to the Big East in football.
Okay.
Them, Navy, and Air Force are just going over there for football. But you know, it's not that bad of a decision because you look at it, they moved to the Mountain West because they want to play better competition. Utah drops out of there, BYU drops out of there, TCU goes to the Big East, and then they get offered to go to the Big 12, so they go there. So in the Mountain West, they really don't have any competition there like they were expecting to. Like Air Force is probably about their best competition there in the Mountain West this year, so there's not a whole lot there for them to. But going to the Big East, it does help the Big East out a little bit because they get another good quality program that's up there at the top of the rankings each and every year in Boise State. Boise State gets to go up against some different types of offenses with West Virginia running their spread type of offense. You got Rutgers who can have a pretty good run game, and just the other teams that they have there in the Big East. It helps them a little bit, but it also could possibly hurt them because, like we've talked about, the Big East just is not that good.
I think that at this point in Boise State's football prominence, they really need to see what is their goal. I mean, it appears to me that Boise State has all they wanted to do is make a national title. That seems to be their main thing. Is we want to win, we want to play in a national. We want to at least have the opportunity to play for a BCS championship game. And I think that if that's really your goal, they should need to just go all the way and join a legitimately powerhouse conference. They need to join the Big Ten, the Pac-12 or Pac whatever it is now, or like the SEC or something. I think that making this lateral move to the Big East, I mean, maybe it was their only option, maybe since they didn't have anybody to play in the Mountain West, but it seems like, I agree with Jesse, it seems like a step down or at least a lateral move. And if they really want to get that recognition of being an elite program, they need to move to an elite conference, and the Big East is obviously not the place to do that.
What does it say about the Big East when, in order to save your conference, you have to go all the way to Boise, Idaho, to get a team to bring the level of play up? But that's really where we are with the Big East. This is a conference that used to have tons of great football teams, and now not so much. It's been a very rough stretch of recent history for the Big East. We've seen their bowl teams really just get hammered in bowl games year after year. That Orange Bowl game is always difficult to watch whenever it's the Big East team that's in it.
The other thing you got to look at is, like Steve said, around the conferences. Big Ten said they're not going to look to expand anytime soon. I don't know what the Pac-12 said, although with their commissioner, who knows, he's ready to pick off anybody. SEC only is letting a few people in, and then you saw West Virginia's moving out of the Big East, and they're fighting tooth and nail to get out of that. Yeah. So that might just been the only place that Boise could have gone to get any sort of what people would feel is legitimacy, because no matter what, they're still a automatic qualifier right now. And even if they're not an automatic qualifier, they're still seen as a Big Six in the general mindset of people.
You see, the also thing you got to think about is Boise State has had so much success in recent memory. They've had multiple undefeated seasons. They've only lost They've lost the bowl game a couple years ago to TCU. They lost last year to Nevada in a fluke. They lost in 2007 to Hawaii. So they've only got 3 losses in the last 4 or 5 years total. So they have a legit argument to say, why won't they let us into the national title game for that shot? We've earned it. We've been staying up there. We've won multiple bowl games. We've won 2 BCS games when we're not supposed to be, although one of them was kind of a fluke, as they stuck them and TCU in the same one together. So they have the legit argument. And other teams, they just don't want to play Boise State because Boise wants them to go there, and it's just a matter of where they're going to play.
And how bad does this hurt for Boise State? You get into the Mountain West, all the good teams leave, so you have to leave the Mountain West, you go to the Big East, and the best team in the Big East leaves the same year. It seems like Boise State just can't catch a break. They want to start playing legitimate teams, and they just can't catch a break no matter where they go, it seems. The Raiders have a very interesting week, and I thought this dynamic was hilarious to watch play out during the week. The Raiders have just signed T.J. Houshmandzadeh, and the question was all week that was leveled at the Raiders after they signed Hoosh was, why didn't you sign T.O.? The team, of course, Carson Palmer then came out and said, well, you got a guy like T.O., he's been around for a while. We've got a bunch of great young receivers. We don't really think we need anyone. We're gonna stand pat with the guys we have right now. And then the very next day they go out and sign T.J. Houshmandzadeh. Of course, that's a blow to T.O. as well. The question is, does this make the Raiders a little bit better? Can they win the AFC West with Carson Palmer and T.J. Houshmandzadeh?
Speaking of T.O., did you see the workout he had that no teams came to? He just had a workout. I thought that was pretty funny.
He got a Chicago Rush contract offer.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? That's good for him. I think that if you look at the AFC West, the 3 leaders of the conference are tied at 4-3 right now. So I think it's pretty much wide open as far as that goes. And the Chargers, like we talked about earlier, are kind of falling apart because their quarterback may or may not be having offensive line / mental issues. So I don't see them making it, and I don't see the Chiefs winning it. And Denver's all over the place. They're not going to be saved by Tebow this year. So I think the Raiders have a legitimate shot at winning. I don't think you can count them out. I don't think you can really lock down any team to be the winner of that conference. But I don't know. I think the Raiders have a shot.
You can't count out the beard in Kansas City. I mean, he's been growing that thing since they started. He's got a 4-game win streak since starting to grow that beard. But you have to really look, this Oakland team feels a little different than it did from the past few years. They feel like that's why they may move for Palmer. It's not just for the future, it's now. We're here to win now. And I think bringing Houshmandzadeh in, he's a good possession receiver. He's a guy that can make some moves underneath. That can free up some spaces for these speedy receivers. Hayward Bay is looking decent enough that he can make some plays. You got Moore making some plays. If Houshmandzadeh can come in, make a lot of catches underneath, make those short routes, that's going to open up the field a little bit more. There's chemistry between those two. You can't put T.O. in there. He is, as Skip Bayless calls him, team obliterator. He's literally destroyed how many different teams, or it's been a controversy in how many different teams. You don't want to put that in on a young team with an influence like that. You want a guy who comes in who knows more of the system. Again, Hugh Jackson knows both these guys. He played with them. So you have to go with that.
You asked how many teams T.O. has had a controversy on. The answer is, of course, every single one of them he's been on. There has been some sort of controversy that has ended with his departure from the team. Moving on, though, beyond that, how awesome is Braxton Miller? Can we just talk about how awesome that game was? To come back, to beat Wisconsin, it made me feel good as an Ohio State fan, so we are going to have a shameless Ohio State plug here for 3 minutes.
Oh, it was great. Vince had a friend up from home. We were watching it in my room, and, Wisconsin went right down the field. They scored it with about a minute and a half left, and I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, this game is over now. Ohio State's not going to be able to get down the field. Their offense has been good this year, but they haven't been able to show that big play potential, that explosiveness that they need. And then all of a sudden, Braxton Miller comes up, throws a 40-yard bomb, touchdown. We're going nuts in my place. I was like, there's a party in Columbus tonight, as well as the entire state of Ohio, for those that love Ohio State. And Braxton Miller, I think he's actually already better than Pryor. He just looks like he's showing a lot more poise in the pocket. And, even though Pryor did go on and beat Wisconsin in Camp Randall Stadium his freshman year, to lead a comeback like that against Wisconsin with the way that Wisconsin's been playing, they're just coming off a loss. It's very rare for Wisconsin to lose 2 games in a row under Bielema. So just the fact that he was able to show that kind of composure. And Boom Herron, he had a great game as well.
You got to look at this, too. Braxton Miller, after that touchdown pass, everyone else is jumping and freaking out. He's walking calmly down the sideline. Yeah. It's like, okay, this kid gets it. So I think that's the best part of that right there. And that was just a sweet throw. We saw it down the field, and you see it, and at first you're like, oh, it's going to be intercepted. Wait, where did that guy come from catching? It just pandemonium and erupting in our room. We were just freaking out. It was awesome. So Braxton Miller, great job on the comeback, already showing the poise of a veteran college QB, even at the end of the game, just walking calmly, kind of soaking it in, but not jumping around, going nuts like everybody else. And I was extremely impressed with that. And Wisconsin, 2 letdowns. They really got to get going here. They really got to catch up on gear because their season's basically shot now.
I mean, if you look at Miller, I mean, yeah, you could say he played good, but he's not looking that. I mean, I'm pretty much let down at his. I'm just kidding, guys. I just want to, because you guys are like,
well, the week before he did only throw 4 passes.
He did, but he's looking really good. I mean,
yeah.
To be a freshman to come in, I'm glad that Coach Fickle decided to finally take Bowserman out these last few weeks, and he's like, you know what, put in somebody who wants to play. And Braxton Miller, the moves he's making with his feet, I mean, he's just looked unbelievable. He's just running down, making some amazing cuts, finding open receivers. So I'm pretty excited about him. Looks really good. He is very awesome. I think to answer the question.
I think he understands exactly what his position is, what it means for Ohio State. He knows who he is replacing, beyond Bowserman, obviously, but he knows who he's ultimately replacing here and who should have been playing this season. And he knows what that means to Ohio State, and I think he's accepted that. And, man, he has thrived. There's been times where he's looked a little bit rough around the edges, but you'll have that with a freshman quarterback. And to think that Ohio State is in the running right now to make some noise in the Big Ten. That's unbelievable to me. I think that says a lot about Miller. That says a lot about Coach Luke Fickell as well, which is why we're giving Ohio State another shameless plug, another 3 minutes of talking about Buckeye football, because here's the question. Can Ohio State make the Big Ten championship?
They very well could. They hold the tiebreaker over Wisconsin. They have to play Michigan and Penn State at their last 2 games of the season. They win both of those games, especially the Penn State one. They very well could end up in the Big Ten title game for their division, which would just be awesome with the fact that they went on the road. They got beat at Miami. They lost to Michigan State. Then they got beat by
Nebraska.
That was a horrible game.
I saw the gears grind to an instant halt in Billy's head.
It was so bad that Billy erased it from his memory.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. I was very sad that night. But nonetheless, though, I think that they legitimately can. Going back to Braxton Miller, you look at it, the maturity level that he has compared to what Pryor possibly had, and like you said, Jesse, he's accepted the fact that he's replacing Pryor. He's become he's just so much more mature at this point in his career. He's making real smart decisions now, and Fickell is actually letting him loose. They're letting him loose with his play decisions. They're not making him stay in the pocket. They're letting him run around. If there's nothing open downfield, then he's taking off, and he's making some good, accurate throws. And that is the thing that was lacking with Pryor. They just were not letting him loose until the bowl games.
Yeah, you got to look at this, too. The only team they really have to beat to get to this championship game is Penn State. Penn State's the only undefeated team. If they beat them, they go into the championship game. They have a loss to Michigan State, who's on the other side of the division. If they lose to Michigan, that won't really affect them on that side of the board. They just have to beat Penn State. If Penn State loses to Wisconsin, there's that tiebreaker. Ohio State jumps them all and goes up and gets into that championship game. And Penn State has to travel to Wisconsin and to Ohio State, 2 places they have not played well at in recent years. So you got to look at that. Ohio State is a legitimate shot. If Miller keeps improving, like he had that stinker against Iowa, I believe it was. No, so excuse me, sorry. Nebraska was bad. He had that 1 for 4 passing against Illinois, and he's steadily, and then his throwing got better. In the end of the game, he showed that he was a closer. So if he keeps improving every game, he'll end up doing really well.
I mean, it's hard to judge with a freshman quarterback how he's going to react to these big game situations. I think we've already seen it, but I don't want to continue on Braxton Miller. I think it is a little bit scary that Penn State is at 5-0 right now in that side of the conference, and that Ohio State and Wisconsin are at 2-2, or Nebraska, I forget who's on that side. But I mean, they have a way to go. But I don't know if it's fair to say that Ohio State only has to beat Penn State, because Penn State could easily lose to Ohio State and then go on to win 2 more games. And then they would have the advantage because they'd have more wins than them, wouldn't they?
No, not on that side of the division.
It doesn't matter. It just matters about the conference record. If you're tied with, you have to have the fewest conference losses. That goes for both sides of the division.
Right.
As well.
I was going to say, because they're not going to be in the Big Ten championship with a losing
record.
If
they end up with just 2 conference losses, Penn State has 2 conference losses, Wisconsin has 2 conference losses, they would have the tiebreaker. That is so Ohio State basically has to win out in order to have a chance at the.
I thought it was whoever's on the one side goes, whoever's on the other side goes, kind of like what the SEC does.
It doesn't matter what you thought, Vince, because now it's hockey time.
It's hockey time.
I'm sorry to so brutally use you for that segue, but it was just too good. I had to do it.
What time is it? Did you say what time is it?
What time was it? I believe it's it's hockey time.
It's hockey time.
Oh, just checking my watch. I couldn't see my watch.
Right. I understand. We had to make sure we get these things through. The Caps, Washington Capitals, in an interesting move. They bench Alex Ovechkin with a minute left versus the Ducks. And, of course, they complete the comeback and win the game in overtime against the Ducks. Here's the question we're talking about this week during Hockey Time. Was this the correct move?
Okay, this is going to be my rant of the show, I feel.
Here comes the content.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. I think I was talking to Jesse about it a little bit ago. This is horrible, horrible coaching. Even though they won, even though it was some miraculous win against all odds, what was their coach? Why would you take Ovechkin out of the game? Like, basically, the comments their coach had, who I don't know his name because I don't follow hockey that close.
Bruce Bochey.
You would know the Capitals head coach. Anyway, but I mean, I think you look at it and it's like, Ovechkin, he's like your Michael Jordan or your team. It's like we said before. You're not going to pull Michael just because he said that. I don't think Ovechkin was feeling it. He really didn't look like he was playing that well. You don't pull Michael Jordan or like LeBron James out of a game and say, nah, he didn't really look like he was playing that well. Well, maybe LeBron. That's a different story.
There it
but
is.
You don't do it. It's just bad coaching. I think 9 times out of 10, this is going to go the other way. They're not going to score, and you're going to look like a fool and maybe get fired because you pulled your star player out. So, boo. Double jeer of the week for Capitals.
Completely disagree with you on that. If Phil Jackson thought Michael Jordan was not playing up to standard, he would have sat him down for those plays. And then
he probably would have been booed out of the arena.
It's Phil Jackson. He would have made it work. So you got to look at this in this way. Their coach is basically showing if you're not going to play well, you're going to sit, and that goes for everybody. You start with the star player, getting to that point, and you get it there. And Ovechkin even said he was mad afterwards, but he understood why he did it, and moving on from there. They won the game. That's the bottom line. Even if they had not lost the game, it would have been a bigger controversy. I understand, but they won the game. And I think basically he was sending a message of if you're not going to play up to speed, no one is an exception. Doesn't matter who you are.
And Barry Murrow said it on SportsCenter after the game that the reason that the coach is not taking the abuse for this is because they ended up winning the game. It's one of those things that if they wouldn't have made the comeback and gone into overtime, then Ovechkin would have had the hand over the coach. But now, since it worked out good, the coach has the upper hand on Ovechkin. So now he's going to have to start doing maybe pay a little bit more attention to what the coach says and listen to him more, because things that he has done is working out right now, even though it probably was a dumb decision at the time, but the fact that it worked out made him look really smart.
Well, and of course, the risk is that the Capitals, especially under Bochey, have been known to be that team that chokes away games, chokes away series because they're not executing on their talent. So this was a big risk for him. He's not a Phil Jackson where he's established, he's won titles, and he's the Zen master. This is a dangerous move for him, but it paid off. It paid dividends. At least it did in that week for the Capitals. It's time for our D3 football segment. Good times. D3 for 3, where we talk about Division 3 football for 3 minutes. This week we're talking about Baldwin Wallace because, of course, the Yellow Jackets come into Alliance this week to play the Purple Raiders. Of course, BW has 1 loss on the season. That coming an unexpected loss to Capital, but they know if they win this game, they win the OAC, and they get the Purple Raiders to not win the OAC title for the first time in 2 decades. So think about that. That's motivation, but the question is, even with all the motivation in the world, can Baldwin Wallace pull it off this weekend?
It's great motivation, but look where we're playing. We're playing at home. There's a huge difference between Mount Union at home and Mount Union on the road. Mount Union loves its home cooking. I understand that we haven't scored in the first quarter in the past 3 games. But we've been able to, our defense has stepped up and made plays, especially at home, and we start letting it up around the second quarter closer to halftime, and after the half, we take over the games, particularly at home. So I have a feeling Baldwin Wallace is going to come and firing all guns ablazing, but I don't think it's going to result in anything simply because we're at home. If it was on the road, I'd be a little more nervous. With again, rivalry games, you can usually throw everything out the window unless you're considering Mount Union. Mount Union, you have to kind of maintain status quo.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty simple answer for me. No. No, come on. There's no.
Yeah, I was going to let you elaborate, but if you don't.
I mean, technically, you said technically there is a chance, but I mean, Baldwin Wallace is good. If they had come out and if they had come out like the preseason team that we expected, and we really expected them to come and rise to prominence in the OC, if we would have seen more of that, maybe we'd give them a shot at a game, but not the way Mount Union's defense and offense, frankly, is playing this year. I don't think they have a shot, and we're at home, like Vince said.
I have a friend that goes to Baldwin Wallace, and 2 weeks ago when they just destroyed Wilmington 75-0, he was so excited about that game. And I'm thinking, all right, you played Wilmington. How excited can you be about a 75-0 victory? And then he says he cannot wait until they play Mount. And I'm just thinking, it's like, dude, you're coming to Alliance. we have the best defense in the country. They've proven it time and time again. When the offense is struggling a little bit, the defense steps up, makes the plays. Last week, we didn't even have Chaz Jordan, and yet the defense still shut down the number one pass offense in the OAC in Otterbein. And with Chaz coming back this week, it's going to be a tough day. Even if Mount Union starts out a little bit slow like they had the last 3 weeks, I don't think there's going to be any problem whatsoever.
I think the issue for Baldwin Wallace is going to be how many great quarterbacks have we seen come to figuratively die at Alliance? That we've seen tons of great quarterbacks come and play, and they play the worst game of their careers in Alliance, and that could be happening to O'Rourke this weekend for the Yellow Jackets. They could do it. Definitely very talented team. Of course, if there's going to be any team that upsets Mount Union in the OAC, it has to be it would be the number 2 team. That is Baldwin Wallace, but I just don't know if I can see it happening this weekend. One last 5 undivided that we got left for you tonight.
5 undivided.
Heat owner, Miami Heat owner Mickey Ariza was fined $500,000 this last week for speaking bad with my quote fingers about the NBA labor talks. Fans were harassing him on Twitter, calling the owners and him specifically a greedy pig. He then tweets back to the fan and says, "You're barking at the wrong owner." That was the tweet that got him fined $500,000 by David Stern. Is it correct for David Stern to try to have an iron grip here on perhaps the public perception of the NBA during this lockout?
Yes, because they all signed they showed this contract in an article I was reading, and it was basically a non-disclosure agreement. Like, you're not allowed to talk about any of the financials going on. So I think that as soon as David Stern opens that up to, what is acceptable to talk about, what isn't acceptable, he's going to be in some tough trouble. So I think the fact that they laid it down, they said, you're not allowed to talk anything about the financials, and the fact that he would respond to some petty tweet on Twitter is just horribly immature by the owner. I mean, you need to be a little more professional about it and realize that, you are talking about multi-million-dollar deals here, and it's really a matter of privacy, and I think it's completely in his right to fine him $500,000 for that.
This is the owner who's been probably the biggest thorn in the side of the NBA so far. He's been disagreeing, from reports that he's been one of the biggest owners to disagree with a lot of stuff going on, and he's causing a lot of problems with those types of things. And you trying to keep that closed inside, and it's just not working. So David Stern, who's always had an iron fist on the NBA, is going to do whatever he feels like, which is why we're going to see a cancellation of games. If it happens, David Stern does not care. He'll make sure he gets his way. He'll cancel it out. On the other note, I think it's hilarious he got called a greedy pig. Of all the things to use, greedy pig. That's creative. It's going to the non-swearing word, the not abusive enough that you could be angry.
He did actually swear. They censored it in the article.
Oh, okay. Well, I really think
you greedy expletive pig.
Oh man, I was now it's got to lose points because it's not creative enough. If you're using expletives, everybody does. You gotta get creative here.
I can see why David Stern decided to fine Ariza, but why $500,000? You see some of the things that some owners are saying. To me, it's worse than what he said. He was just defending himself, saying that even though he has been, like you said, a pain in the side, but just for saying that you're barking at the wrong owner, I don't think that's necessarily worth $500,000 compared to what some people have been saying about the lockout.
Right. I guess responding in that way, saying you're barking at the wrong owner, then implies that he's talking about other owners who are dragging the process down, but not him. That, of course, it could be construed that way. I've had many friends who refer to David Stern as Comrade Stern, and again, he has an iron fist over the NBA, and like Vince said, he will go to almost any length to prove a point. And right now, fining an owner $500,000 for a tweet, that is proving David Stern's point that you're not going to talk about these negotiations.
And I think part of it to look at too is that it isn't what he said. That's not really the point. It wasn't that it was the fact that he tweeted it all in reference to the financial agreement between the players and the owners. I think that was the big thing. So I think that Stern was pretty much neutral about what he said. It was just the fact that it had any sort of connotation having to do with the lockout that landed him the $500,000 bill.
On a side note, athletes and owners who own professional teams should just have somebody who's a PR person run their Twitter, because they've gotten themselves in so much trouble over so many different things because of the prominent positions they're in. They just need some guy to look at this and go, no, don't tweet that. I'll fix it for you. And switch that.
Some do, some don't.
They really need to do that. They should just make it mandatory. It's constitutional law or something like that.
Well, when you look at it, it's really a problem for really all professional sports and professional entities. Your Twitter is, unlike a Facebook, because really almost all Facebooks are run by a PR company. But Twitter is really more personal. Some people have a PR person that runs their Twitter, some don't. And again, it's not usually a problem until you say something that is perhaps in violation of a non-disclosure agreement, or if you're knocking a couple back and think it's a good time to start tweeting when it's not a good time to tweet at all. Twitter is actually something that's been a problem for a lot of different organizations, trying to keep the message in unison and trying to keep all their ducks in a row as far as making everyone toe the line on rules. Again, it was a problem here for Stern, and he made an example of an owner. And I think we will not be seeing very many outspoken owners, at least for the rest of this duration of these negotiations.
Raiders Armageddon.
Time for Raiders Armageddon. As the Fantasy League is rolling on, I am on the comeback of my life. I'm going to win it all. I'm not going to lose from here on out. Steve is back to being terrible because he doesn't check his team. All is right in the universe.
Any win that I get is just gravy, because I wasn't even at the draft. So any win that I get is just bonus for me. I don't even care.
By the way, Jesse and Billy, myself and Billy, we're winners this week.
I had you. I look and I'm like, all right, I got Jesse, and then I'm looking because I
had
had
nothing.
I had like 3 people. Mike Tolbert is out for the game. I'm like, all right, well that doesn't help me. Then I look, I'm like, all right, Phillip Rivers, he's only 20 ahead of me. I've got like 7 people. He's got 1 person left. And then I look, his like top running backs get 30 points each. I'm like, well, I'm done for.
You had nothing, son. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry I
not
had to
this
hurt
time.
you in that way.
How do you expect to win when we are division foes, Jesse, and I'm far ahead of you right now?
When you're far ahead of me, it's a 4-team league and we all make the playoffs. How can you be far ahead of me?
We're division foes.
Yeah, right. But I like the way you said that. All right.
But yeah, it's just been fun, Jesse. It's like, I'm glad that we thought about doing this before the NFL season started, because it's definitely been fun coming on here each and every week, giving Steve a whole bunch of crap for missing the draft and then not checking his team. Now having like 4 guys on bye this week. Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate the easy win.
Well, the funnier thing is that I can lose the rest of the games and then happen to fluke out and win 2 at the end of the season and win the whole league.
Yeah. That's the sad part.
Everyone makes
it's
the
actually,
play.
again, with the depth of the player rosters, because there's only 4 of us, that is entirely possible.
If he puts everybody back in at some point and everyone's back to being done by, he can go on his torrent rampage again with Tom Brady getting 40 points a game.
Maybe this was just some weird strategy by Steve to undercut everybody else and just sandbag a little bit.
Hey, that
I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying
that could
it's
be
a
it. Maybe we should just have a system like NCAA conference tournaments. You have regular season champions, and then you have your postseason champions, and they're both kind of weighted equally, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Steve just thinking that off the top of his head and using that as an excuse for him not ever checking his fantasy team. Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Silence by the owner, Steve Kandray.
I have steel resolve, remember?
Yes, it's those years of watching Steelers football is built up your steely resolve. You see what I'm doing there? You see what I did there? But yeah, there it is. Thank you for my charity laughs. It has been great to watch this league kind of play out, because really fantasy football is awesome. Love it. It is also great to know that each and every week there are a myriad and seemingly unlimited amount of free agents that you can pick up that are going to score 20. Your eyes on a buy, screw it, I'll drop them. I can pick up someone that scores 25 points.
A myriad of seemingly unlimited free agents. Look at Jesse waxing eloquently about fantasy football.
This is why he has the full scholarship
This
ride.
is why they pay me the big bucks, And by big bucks, I mean I don't get paid.
This is why Jesse's going to be a lawyer someday, because he has the articulate skills.
Yeah, it's also why I am going to pick all these following games during pick time correctly. It is pick time. Number 9, South Carolina is taking on Arkansas. Number 7 in the nation is at Arkansas. What are you thinking about this big SEC battle?
Arkansas. South Carolina doesn't have Garcia since he got booted from the team finally. Lattimore's out for the season with a knee injury. South Carolina's offense.
So you're saying South Carolina's going to blow them out of the water?
Yeah, I'm saying exactly that.
Arkansas, I believe, lost their running back as well for the rest of the season. He was their workhorse. I'm actually going to go South Carolina in the upset. Old ball coach knows how to ruin people's days, especially when his season is tanked.
Normally how I usually pick these kind of games is if I have a shirt from either team, I'll pick that team to win. But I've entered an interesting conundrum in the fact that I have a shirt from both Arkansas and South Carolina. So I'm just going to go with Arkansas because they're ranked higher.
I feel like we just learned a lot about Steve.
We did.
Thank you for letting us into that moment of your life.
Well, I do. If I see a team on paper and they're pretty close, if they're like 5 and 7, they're a few spots apart, and I got a shirt, I'll be like, I'll go team I have a shirt. But
that's the Billy method with Boise State. I just I guess it would be a hat. Either way.
Hey, I got a shirt from Boise too.
There you go. I'm going to go with Arkansas either way. Kansas State, number 14 in the nation, is taking on number 3 Oklahoma State. Big 12 matchup of a Kansas State team that's coming off of a loss. Oklahoma State team that's trying to remain in the national title hunt.
I think it's Oklahoma State. I don't think K-State has the defense to keep up with Justin Blackman and Brandon Whedon. He's been playing like such a Heisman candidate this year. He's just had an explosive year. Quite possibly the best quarterback in the Big 12, even better than Landry Jones.
There are some of those teams that get up high in the rankings. You look at them and go, wait, why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. I get that feeling with Kansas State. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State for this game.
Yeah, I really don't see any way that Kansas State's going to come out of nowhere and knock off Oklahoma. I think, like you said, Oklahoma State has been, vying at getting into the national championship game. So, and they might make it since number 1 plays number 2. But I'm going to go with Oklahoma State.
Yeah, this is the week. They know what's up. They know if they win this game, they are now in the national title game if they can win out. So that's more than enough motivation, I think, to win at home for Oklahoma State. Now, of course, the game that we all knew we would have to pick coming into tonight, number 1 LSU travels to Tuscaloosa to take on number 2 Alabama.
I'm going to go with Alabama in this one. Alabama's got the number 1 ranked defense. Granted, they haven't played the same amount of people as LSU has, but I think Alabama's defense is just too strong, and I think Trent Richardson is much bigger and scarier back than they've ever dealt with. I'm going to Alabama.
I want to say SEC bias here and say,
it could pop up later on.
This could be an SEC bias between which of these teams wins. But I think I'm going to go with Vince and say that Alabama, because Trent Richardson he's looking unreal. I mean, they've been able to it doesn't even matter if teams have a bunch of people in the box. I mean, they've been able to just out physical and play smash mouth football, which is pretty exciting. So I say rolling tide. Go Alabama.
I'm going to go with the LSU Tigers for this reason. The last time that they had 2 quarterbacks that they were playing substantially, they won the national title when they had Matt Flynn, Ryan Perrilloux. Jefferson and Lee make a much better combination than what Flynn and Perrilloux did. And Les Miles, he doesn't want to lose. He wants another national title.
I'll be honest, if there are more than 10 points combined scored in this game, I'm going to be very disappointed because I want this to be an awesome defensive grudge match between 2 teams that are trying to smash the ball down each other's throats. That being said, I am going to go with Alabama in this game just because I love that defense, and I think that they're going to be able to better control the clock over LSU in this game. The question is, though, the winner of this game, due to the SEC bias, do they jump up to number 0 in the standings?
They might. They might jump to number half. It is possible.
It's entirely possible.
The other thing you got to look at is Les Miles always has one of those games where you don't know what the heck he's doing. He has not had that this year, and in the past, he's shown that he has one of those weird games where everything just goes wrong for him. He's overdue.
Let's move on to the NFL for our picks this week. Baltimore at Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, they looked good last week. They're going to do it again this week.
I'm going with Baltimore. Pittsburgh lost too many defenders on their lineup. A lot of their linebackers may not return. That's where they get a lot of their sacks and generate a lot of their pass rush from. I'm going to go with Baltimore.
Oh yeah, they're not very good at defending the pass. They just played the best quarterback in the league last week. That's kind of just.
I'm talking about the linebacker.
Anyway, I say the Steelers because number 1, they want revenge on Baltimore. Number 2, they're just on a hot streak. I mean, you look at Big Ben. He's just playing like a man on fire right now. You look at those young wide receivers, and especially the defense has been doing really well. So I think the Steelers are going to pull this one out, especially being at home too.
The Steelers at home. This series, this rivalry is usually it's whoever's home is winning the games, and right now the Steelers are hot and they're at home. So I'll pick with them. Chicago against Philadelphia. Philadelphia suddenly wins one game against a terrible Cowboys team, and they're back.
Yeah, that's why I'm going with Philadelphia. They're actually starting to look like the team that should be winning football games like they were predicted to go at the beginning of the year, and I think Vic has a pretty good day. Chicago
has been surprisingly good. You look at that, Jay Cutler has been pretty effective. That being said, I still think Philadelphia wins. They got that bye week. They're always crazy on bye week after bye weeks, but I think they finally figured out all their pieces. I think Philly wins this one.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Philadelphia. I think they're due to get back in this season and put it to Chicago.
Yeah, what's the stat? Andy Reid has never lost. Coming off of a bye week, I would be insane to pick anyone but an Andy Reid coach team, so I'll go with Philadelphia. Tampa Bay at New Orleans, a bit of an interesting matchup as far as the NFC South goes.
Saints, they get revenge, and playing at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, it's almost impossible to win there when you're on the road.
The Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
I'm glad you tossed in the sponsorship. You couldn't just say Superdome.
See, I always thought it was just a Superdome.
It was until this season.
It was.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I'm also going to go with New Orleans, depending on if their head coach is there for the game. If their head coach is not there, then it's going to be Tampa. But I'm going to go with New Orleans and say that their coach shows up.
As long as we're tossing out sponsors, this is my Under Armour pick of the game here, pick of the show.
Under Armour, send him the check, please.
It is in my pocket. No, I'm going to have to go with New Orleans. I think they're just still good. I know they're maybe not the power we expected them to be, but I think they're going to knock off Tampa Bay and take it home.
Well, with my Campbell's Chunky Soup pick of the afternoon, I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints as well. Campbell's, please, you should call me. We can talk. Finally, bonus round, guys. Final pick of the evening. James Winzutsky thinks that the Blue Jackets can be 500 by Christmas. They are currently losing 4-1 to the Maple Leafs. What are the odds the Jackets can pull this off?
Not very good.
Is that a number?
I have nothing else to say about it.
How do you translate not very good into a percentage? You just multiply it by 100 or divide it?
You want a number?
I would love a number.
6%.
6%.
I'm going to go with my PTI odds of the day, and I think it's going to be, I'd say that I'm going to go with 75%.
Well,
we're just going to jump it. We're going high, man.
That's a lot of wins, man. That's a lot of wins.
Well, I'm going to use my Meineke Car Care odds maker of the show here and say I'm going to give them 50% to be 500 by Christmas.
You know, it just this team's too up and down right now. Of course, they've got well over $30 million worth of injuries sitting, not playing on the ice right now. They could definitely get hot if they get all those players together, but that's a lot of wins, man. And a lot of upsets that they're going to have to pull between now and then.
That's all they have to do.
He's getting hammered right now by the Maple Leafs. I'll plug it in. I'll say about 30% because it can happen. This team can get hot easily, but right now it's just not looking that way for the Blue Jackets. Very, very disappointing start to the year. Worst start in franchise history. That'll do it for us on Radio Zone Weekly. We hope you enjoyed this week, and don't forget to tune in Saturday as Mount Union takes on Baldwin Wallace. Giannino's pregame show scheduled for 12:45. Kickoff will be 1:30. The OAC title on the line. The winner wins the OAC, unless Baldwin Wallace would happen to win and then somehow lose unexpectedly the next week. But we doubt that would happen. So join us for that game. It'll be great. It's going to be great stuff. And don't forget to tune in next Thursday as well for Radio Zone Weekly here on the radio voice of Mount Union, WRMU 91.1.